Welcome everybody to another episode of the Key to Games podcast here on Game Wisdom, where we examine the art and science of games. I am Josh Blazer, and joining me, my co-host for the show from Casual Game Studio, Joshua Reyes. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. I actually finally got back from my Texas trip. I was looking through my, how Google does like your how much time you've spent. Said I spent 21 hours inside the airport, not flying. So yeah, I had slept overnight at one of the airports, so it was a trip. So I'm just barely getting unjet lagged. Other than that, I'm doing good. How about you, Josh? Milestones?
Yep, we
Yeah,
finally hit 10,000 subscribers here
that's
on the
right, man.
channel. Hopefully that means more people stop by for these shows, but yeah, the channel is now, I guess, semi-minor famous on
There we
YouTube.
go. It's in my minor famous.
Yeah. The problem is, I don't know if I actually get a fancy plaque at 10,000. I was reading that I think you have to get to 100,000 before they'll actually send you.
100K.
So
Yeah.
I need.
Maybe it's a certificate.
There you go. Can I get a sticker at least?
Sticker.
So if 90,000 people are watching this right now, you like to subscribe,
Yes.
feel free to do that. Just like get the the plaque and then you can leave. But thank you to everyone. I'm going to make a special video about it, and if we get people, I'm trying to get like schedules aligned. I'd like to do like a special like super long stream one day. Maybe we can get something like that to happen.
Definitely.
But other than that, I'm gonna have to start working on the next book. Gotta get back into Souls Lakes as well, and
There we go.
then at that point, then when that's done, it's time to get to shooters. So it's gonna be a very busy time for me this summer. But
Yeah.
with that, and thank you. Yeah, there you are. Just do like 90,000 alts, and we'll do it right there. Just YouTube won't mind, as the algorithm is like pointing the laser at my channel right now.
Right. Chat GPT, make YouTube holds.
Yeah. But for today's episode, this is part, I think, 4 or 87. It's hard to keep track now of our look at the shooter genre. So, the last part we focused on kind of the early 2010s with the rise of kind of role playing shooters, the Stalkers, Borderlands, and so on. For this one, we're moving a little bit further ahead into the mid 2010s, and when we get to it into the era of boomer shooters. If not, again, we'll say that for a conclusion for it next time. But as we enter kind of like the middle of the 2010s, as we said last time, that from pretty much like mid 2000s into this period, the market was dominated by kind of multiplayer based shooting, by the, again, role playing shooting aspects of it. But then we began to see some games really push things in different directions. And one of my favorites, and I guess like the earliest for, I guess, today's entry would be Bulletstorm. We've been
Yes.
teasing this one for the last like 3 episodes. We can finally talk about it. So, since I've been talking for the last few minutes, I'm going to throw things over to you. What did you think of Bulletstorm?
It's probably one of my favorite shooters, like of all time. Um, I don't know, like if the dialogue or any of that holds up now. I actually reinstalled it, and I was gonna try and get time to play it to see how the storyline plays, but the mechanics of the game are, I believe, amazing. Right? I like the shooting is just, I mean, on point, right? And then also like the skill mechanics of the game, and then like environmental kills and combo systems. It was very given like FPS. This is very arcadey feel, but not right. And at this time for me, it was a massive like breath of fresh air. Everything was brown. Everything was multiplayer. And this was, I just think, a really good like shot in the dark, like, hey, there needs to be a change in shooters, right? Because at that time I believe everything was really stagnant. If I'm going to look back at the shooter era, and we only had a few bright spots here and there, but to me, that game like holds a really special place in my heart, just gameplay wise. It like level design wise, it's kind of like theme park esque, but the overall just moment to moment gameplay of that game is just top notch to me, Josh. What do you think?
For sure. And as a bit of a fun thing to make us all feel old, I did look up when it was first released, and that was 2011. It feels like it came later in the decade, but
Yeah.
yeah, Bulletstorm is one of those games. As you said, the humor in the writing probably doesn't quite hold up as much today as it did, or arguably if it did
If
about
it ever did, right?
12 years ago. But the pedigree of the studio, People Can Fly, of course,
People can
this was
fly.
the studio who did Painkiller, which I know we talked about that, I think that was 2 episodes ago. And what I think Bulletstorm did, I think it kind of laid the blueprint for you can, if you're not going to focus on multiplayer, just really make the single player feel interesting, feel different. Because you can never do something like a Bulletstorm in a full-on competitive multiplayer. When you can, use a sniper rifle that you can actually like manually
Right.
move the bullet as it's flying at an enemy. But
Right.
it's kind of like how we saw the difference between single player and multiplayer balance. That single player games can get away with very weird or spiky powers because you don't have to worry about a player on the other end dealing with it. You're fighting robots or demons or whatever. And it worked fantastically well. Like the gunplay in Bulletstorm, we're going to be bringing up gunplay, I think, a lot in today's episode, was spot on. Like I can't think of like any weapon in that game that felt bad to use.
Right. Every single game, every single weapon felt good, unique, had weight, right? Distinction. And like I'm pretty sure how wacky the game was, they probably had like 40 other weapons created,
Mm-hmm.
but they decided we're gonna keep it short and concise, just like the campaign, right? Like you were
Mm-hmm.
mentioning, I believe it was, I don't know, you could probably like crunch through it in like 6 hours or something. It was
Mm-hmm.
pretty short. And that was also something nice. I mean, again, like respecting the player's time, um, bringing the mechanics to the forefront, the campaign to the forefront, and again, like not really being wishy-washy on what we have to have some type of multiplayer. It
Mm-hmm.
has to be the multiplayer has to be at least like 50%, right? And they didn't do that. It was like all campaign.
Mm-hmm.
I think there was in the full clip edition maybe like a multiplayer horde mode, but it wasn't like
Mm-hmm.
full on multiplayer. I'm not sure about that though.
Mm-hmm. And having like the different guns, like it reminds you a little bit of like how like Ratchet and Clank really blew up when it
Right.
first came out. That it was a third person platformer, but we're going to throw this gun turns enemies into chickens, and this weapon is just like a multi rocket launcher, and it's very interesting like how like when you think about it, so few games really I think made the weapons the star of their games. And Bulletstorm is one that, while the main character is certainly there and he's obviously very in your face, it's probably more remembered for its gunplay. What was like? There's that one that showed like the flails that would like or the bolos that would like wrap around the enemy and then would explode. Again, the sniper rifle. I think your assault rifle was also your railgun. And again, like coming from the developer of Painkiller, where every weapon had some very different alt fire, like it's very easy to see that kind of evolution.
Right. Yeah, like the Ratchet and Clank comparisons really it's a good comparison. I mean, and even like the simple stuff, like just like the boot kick, right?
Mm-hmm.
And like your leash, like everything works and feels good, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
and so I felt like if there was anything that didn't really fit or was excessive, they called it, and so it resulted in a really short, polished product. And yeah.
Mm-hmm. And I guess with the weapon designs themselves, it is again that case where you could do very different things that you really weren't allowed or you couldn't really do if the game was either being more grounded, I guess, or more multiplayer focused. And again, like the 2010s was either the era of, you know, grays and browns of the Call of Duties, or was, multiplayer, 10, 8 versus 8, 10 versus 10, 50 versus 50 with a Battlefield, and so on. And I think it's a really good, like, as I'm talking about this, like, it's a really good parallel to how much, like, the AAA industry has kind of, like, shifted to being more, I guess, like, generalized. Like, again, like, the more, money that goes into these games, the less you can really spend on making these very spiky or very stand out. And, speaking about that, right now the game that everyone's talking about is the new Zelda title, or it looks more like the new Banjo-Kazooie title from all the videos I'm seeing people building, like, mechs that transform into spider tanks, and, like, Link calls in, like, an orbital bombardment with his laser tank.
You can weld, right?
I think so. Yeah. But is that situation then, I think the shooter genre kind of fell into this, where everyone felt like it was more and more trying to be, I guess, like a prestige genre with, the Call of Duties or being very multiplayer. And the more you try to, I guess, make things multiplayer more generalized, it hurts, like, the creativity. Again, like, if we talk about, like, 2 episodes ago, when we got to the era of, like, BioShock, Half-Life, what was it, Condemned, and so on, like, those games, even though BioShock did have multiplayer, it was still, and even Half-Life, people remember them more for their single player rather than, playing with friends for a deathmatch.
Indeed. I mean, I feel like I was the only one that really put time into BioShock 2 multiplayer. I did actually put a ton of time into that, but definitely, I mean, like you were saying, this was a time of change, and Bulletstorm, I think, like, was one of the first ones to really when did Borderlands 2 come out? Or Borderlands. Anyway, like, I think this one was really, again, like, focus on the campaign. Single player can be a thing, and then, as we'll talk about with the later games, like, just completely making the campaign like the focus of the game is, as if it was something new in this time.
Yeah. Borderlands 1 came out in 2009. Borderlands 2 came out in 2012.
2012. Okay, thank you.
And yeah, like, having that single player focus, or that kind of, like, making each individual character more powerful, is something that, again, we would begin to see things shift back that way as we got further in the last decade. And I think this was the era when Spec Ops: The Line came out. Let's see. Spec Ops was 2012. 2012 was a very big year, it seems, for...
and also Spec Ops: The Line, also, like, that really... I think we spoke about it before, but to me, that holds another very special place in my heart. Like, with the campaign, I don't think there was any multiplayer that I'm aware of.
There was, and the developer, like, hated to put it in. Like, they quote it as a cancerous tumor on the disc.
Quit game development after that. Like, it was, but yeah, I mean, like, just really focusing on the campaign, and Spec Ops told the kind of unique story. And while Bulletstorm's story, I believe, was just kind of wacky, and, like, he was a space pirate and betrayed, there was, like, nothing really to it. Again, just, like, focusing on the campaign, making it fun. Boss battles were fun. So, and everything about it was very unique. And then with a very ratchet and clanky feel, and then plus the arcade and the combo system, I don't think there's been a game that's ever tried to, like, come close to that, or kind of, like, get in that era. As Ever Perky was saying, I'm surprised it didn't become a thing. Because it was just, it seems like it is almost a unique subgenre of shooters in a way.
The closest I could think of would be maybe something like Mad World, if you ever played that one for the Wii. And like, and for those of you who don't remember, like, Mad World was kind of like super over the top, ultra violent kind of game, kind of built around, like, the theme of the Running Man. So you're on this game show, and the only way to move forward in each level is to get points. And you get points for, the more violent the kill was. So it's like, yes, you could just punch this guy to death. Or you could jam a stop sign into his head. and throw his body into a barrel, and you throw that barrel at a bunch of enemies, and the barrel explodes, killing everyone for a combo multiplier.
Wow, that sounds great. Manhunt didn't have that.
No, it did not. And yeah, like when we talk more about like action games at some point, especially about like mastery, we should definitely talk more about like having these like ways of, I guess, like proving mastery or rewarding like expert level play in these genres. Because like Devil May Cry could also, I think, maybe fit in some respect here. But to bring this back to Bulletstorm, the whole skill shot system was really well done. It was this idea that, again, yes, you could just run around like in a traditional first-person shooter and shoot everyone in the head, and, you know, you win like that. But you could also, you know, kick an enemy, and then do the lasso or the grapple, pull him into something, and then you shoot him while he's being pulled into it. And the game, again, it acknowledges it. And I think that's, again, a major point about kind of like the difference between just letting the player do something and outright, you know, rewarding or making explicitly clear that, yes, we want you to, you know, knock him in the air, shoot him 3 times, hit him with explosive, bounce him over there, and just, you know, keep him juggled for as many times as you can.
Right. I mean, the interactivity of that game with that combo system blew me away. Like, literally, I was like trying to figure out, okay, how would I program this combo system in here? Because it depends, like, did you lash them first? Did you do this first? And then, so there's a lot of like variables that are involved in the combo skill system. So I could see why other devs would not try to go for it, because it's a very intricate system. Whoever, you know, the guys who were working behind that put in a lot of work for it to feel so immersive and still work and not like in your face, but still like so natural, right? And again, it to me, like, there was a lot of parts in the game where like I really would want to replay a certain section of the scene just to try and get a higher you know, skill what did it skill count
Skill count? Score, kill score, I forget the name.
right combo skill score. And so yeah, like it became very addicting just itself, that portion of it.
And I could imagine if it came out later, they could probably have like a global leaderboard or an online leaderboard for that kind of system.
Right. And daily, I don't know, then they could allow new levels to be added, and then daily challenges for just, you know, be great.
Yep. And again, like, we can certainly muse about like games being released at like the wrong time or coming too early in these cases, and it is, again, like a shame. And I do feel like a lot of people did not give Bulletstorm the time of day. I think, again, the humor, the writing, it's very much that game I played earlier this year. What was it? Wanted Dead. It was kind of like super like generic, like very schlocky kind of dialogue in that one. And a lot of people, I think, really bounce off of games if the story is like very grating or the main character is grating. If you remember, of course, the DMC Devil May Cry, when they tried the reboot and they completely changed Dante's personality, because everyone I know loved the story in DMC.
Yeah, I just skipped the cutscene like usual, and then I was okay. But yeah, I mean, I think that Bulletstorm, I don't remember the marketing campaign for it, but I don't think that it was like, I don't know, very kid friendly, right?
No.
So the game, no. So the game itself was like very gory, very bloody. And then of course, a lot of like bathroom humor and just a lot of like really low hanging jokes, right? And so people are going to really bounce off of that, and there had to be a reason for someone to want to stick around and kind of drudge, I wouldn't say drudge through it, but to actually get through some of the things when maybe it's just a little bit too offensive. And even for that time, like if I could travel back in time and see how me reacted to the humor, then I don't know what it would be. But I mean, I still made my way through the game. Like, the game was amazing, but I could see how it would easily just push people off, and it didn't last very long. I think what Bulletstorm just came and went, right? It didn't really hang around. Just kind of like was released and then into cult classic. Like I don't think it really had much other than that, you know.
Yeah, as I think about it, I think Bulletstorm holds up better than maybe Spec Ops: Line does.
Definitely.
Because Spec Ops was definitely more known for the storytelling rather than the individual gameplay. I still remember some painful areas where I felt like enemies just like teleport in and then they just snipe you from the back and kill you.
Yeah.
And it was still in that very much era of, again, like cover-based shooting. Like Bulletstorm had cover-based. Well, I don't think it was cover-based. I think you just healed if you weren't being attacked.
You kind of had the option. They put some like, you know, street cones and things to hide behind, but it wasn't cover based. And then I do remember some extremely painful like moments in gunplay with Spec Ops and just being like, oh, but the story's great. But having some like some of the guns, you know, nothing really had a difference or a different feel, right? I think most of the guns were pretty generic, maybe by choice. I'm not sure, but you know, I do remember having some strange AI issues, like you mentioned, and then especially some weird sniper AI fights. It's toward the later end of the game, so it did have some weird technical issues, and the gunplay was not like top notch on the, you know, it was passable is what I could say.
Yep. And I guess I'm trying to think if there's anything else regarding Bulletstorm to glean from it. Again, like it really did stand out. Like as we said, like one of the big things about like this particular our show for this week is a focus on unique or very high quality gunplay. And it's not something I think we really generally see out multiplayer. I think this was something that I brought up last week. I know when we were talking about kind of like, I think this was like the 2000s era with like Unreal, Quake, and so on, that those games just did not interest me as much from a multiplayer standpoint. I remember saying like, I like when the guns actually feel like they're impacting the enemy. And the thing that always drives me away from a lot of multiplayer shooters is that it feels like I'm shooting the enemy, and yeah, he can still run and jump and, you know, quadruple leap around the environment like that.
Right. Yeah. And Bulletstorm is a great example of like enemies that react. You know, they limb specific damage. Like you really feel the impact of like you're shooting a gun at someone, right? And like if I don't know, we happen to be running around in a multiplayer and you shot me at least once, I don't think I could keep running around like that, right? So like the immersion and like the sponge bullet factor it can really be like averted with like really good animations, good reactions, good sound, good weight, good juice. All those things need to be are required. In multiplayer fast, it's really hard to even like fire those effects off like in a proper timing. Will they work and it still have weight, and for the game to continue like working at the fast pace that it would like for you to process it and it still work, right? So games like this give you a little bit more time to sit back, chew on the juice, the effects and everything, and really like take in the scenery in a different way.
Maybe the closest like a multiplayer game could do would be like a hero-based shooter, like a Team Fortress or an Overwatch, where you can have each character be like a legitimately different role on the field. But we're talking about like a Call of Duty, a Battlefield, or very like, I guess like a deathmatch or a very like basic kind of design. You can't have characters who can, you know, create a grapple point and then launch up there, or, you know, shoot a rocket launcher that turns into like multi-rockets and hit everyone.
No. I mean, you could. It would be really difficult to program and balance. So,
and don't forget about latency if you're playing this online. Latency,
right? Yeah.
So, in 2012, I looked this up. Another game that I was thinking about that we haven't talked about yet, but also keeping with this theme, would be the Darkness 2. I know last week for sure we talked about Warframe. So, the Darkness 2 was kind of like, I think this would be Digital Extreme's like last non-Warframe related product before they kind of went all in on it. And the Darkness 1 and the Darkness 2 are like two completely different games. The first game was definitely inspired by like BioShock, to be a very moody, very like emotionally grounded single player shooter. And you just so happen to have like demonic powers. The Darkness 2 kind of went full on, we're making a comic book, basically, a comic book style video game, with your character just being like the one man / demon force on the field. Did you ever play the Darkness 2 by any chance?
I did not play the Darkness 2. I had some, I knew some people who were massive fans of it, but I did not get to play it, so you're going to have to tell me about this one.
And what about chat? For people watching this live or recorded, did you enjoy or did you play the Darkness 2? Well, the Darkness itself, or Darkness 2, what they did was, again, they did this idea of, we want the player to be the most powerful piece on the board. So your character basically gains power while being in the dark. And one of the things they did to make things interesting is that all the enemies had kind of light-based defenses. So when you're in a spotlight or they throw a flare at you, it weakens your powers. So you have to always be in the dark, knock out lights. It's kind of like more violent Splinter Cell in that regard. But like your character can, not only can he dual wield, he can quadruple wield, because your tendrils can grab guns and just start shooting enemies. You can grab enemies, use them as bullet shields. And of course, since you have shadow demon monsters, they can eat enemies to gain their health back. But it's, again, very much that game where, oh no, there's 15 guys coming at me. Who cares? I have 6 arms, demon powers, and I can, throw explosions around at will.
I am seeing a lot of tendril action happening here.
Mm-hmm. And I think several things did kind of hurt the game from a marketing standpoint. Like I said, the first game was very grounded. It was more soulful in terms of the character and dealing with his power. This one, again, they just went for, we're making an action movie now. Just go, kill, rip and tear. It's a lot more profanity-laden and a lot more violent than the first one, as you can probably tell by some of the screenshots if you look them up. But
yeah, I'm watching the trailer right now. Very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Not sure why I didn't give this one a whirl. Maybe there's something about the marketing. Was there something weird about the marketing?
Well, I think it went from a different developer. That could have been one factor. Again, Digital Extremes made this. I think they made this after the original version of Warframe, or their other game didn't do so well. So they kind of like took on some contract work. And it kind of was one of those games that it, much like with Bulletstorm, it kind of came and went. But one of the things that I think really made it work, again, was that it made the player feel powerful, but it didn't discount the enemies. And like this goes back to what we were talking about with Fear. That in Fear, you are super powerful in that game, but the enemies are also super highly intelligent. They're going to, team up and properly take you on. While the enemies in the Darkness 2 were nowhere near as intelligent in that respect, they had their own means of fighting you. So it felt like you were kind of playing two different games. You trying to be in the dark, the enemies trying to put you into the light, and, who's going to come out on the end there.
Very interesting.
Now, the other thing the game did that I thought was really well done, sadly, I did not get a chance to do this. If we can do this for multiplayer nights, one day we could, is that they had an entirely original multiplayer campaign. And how it worked was that you played as kind of henchmen for the main character who would do missions kind of adjacent to the main story. So each character has basically a preferred weapon and one of the different powers of the main character. So one character can summon tendrils, another character has his darkness shield. So it kind of played very Doom-centric, or I'm sorry, Diablo-centric, or very much in that respect, where everyone can use guns, but we each have their own unique power, and we're trying to fight our way through waves after waves of enemies.
Excellent. I like that. I think I might be interested in that one.
I don't know if the multiplayer servers are even still up. Again, this game is now over a decade old. But it did, again, like, a really great job. And I do wonder, like, as we've been talking about kind of like this particular period, like 2010 to like 2015, 2016, if another factor for why these games didn't do well, kind of the same thing that doomed Resident Evil for a time. That the market just kind of said, well, we don't want survival horror games. We want more action, multiplayer, military shooters. So when you have a shooter that is just a single player game or single player focus, people, or the market, I should say, didn't feel like that was necessary. And again, like,
go ahead.
I was gonna say, like, for people watching us now, like, it seems so, like, weird to be complaining about this. You know, in 2023, where, you know, in the last decade, indie developers have made some of the best single-player driven experiences that the industry has ever seen. And now we're seeing more developers go, hey, maybe we don't need to turn our game into a 500-hour plus live service shooter. But again, in the 2010s, as developers were chasing the live service market, they were chasing Call of Duty and Team Fortress money. If it didn't have multiplayer, a lot of publishers just said, nope, we don't want it.
Exactly. I mean, they were seeing the amount of money that those games were pulling in, and so they were looking for any avenue in any way to try to capitalize on that. And I created a lot of games that were hindered in that regard.
Mm-hmm. And another game that came out I want to talk briefly about was Shadow Warrior, or shall I say the Shadow Warrior remakes. Did you play any of those?
No, I didn't get to play it. I wanted to play it so bad, so bad. I feel bad. Yeah. How was it?
Shadow Warrior is very interesting. Like, if we kind of start talking about, like, I guess the origins of, like, boomer shooters, I think, like, the Shadow Warrior remakes kind of, like, grew adjacent to that in a weird way. Like, the developer, I think, was Flying Hog. I think that's the name of the studio who did that. Like, they were definitely trying to, like, make Shadow Warrior whatever was, like, the trend at the time. So the first Shadow Warrior was kind of more in line with, like, the Darkness or Bulletstorm. It's a game where you have gun and sword, and it was, like, trying to mix them both. Then with the Shadow Warrior 2, when the whole role-playing shooter craze kicked off, now we have role-playing elements. Now our guns can level up, and there's different rarities of gear. And then Shadow Warrior 3 is very much inspired by Doom Eternal. It's very push-forward combat. And I think each one kind of, like, is good in its own respect. I felt number 2 was the most unique, but it also had, like, the most, I think, issues with that kind of gameplay.
Yeah, there's not much I can say. I've only played the first one from 97. So.
But chat is relatively quiet. I think everyone fell asleep with all these shooter talk. We'll see if we get some more comments, but I'm curious for people watching this, if you did play any of these Shadow Warrior reboot style games. I think the problem is that I really lost interest in the first one because the gunplay just kind of felt a little repetitive. I lost interest in the second one because the loot just felt like it was overwhelming. And the third one I did beat, but it is also arguably the shortest one. It was only like 5 to 6 hour long campaign. But again, like, these games I think really did show, again, you can do interesting things in a single player setting that you couldn't necessarily do in multiplayer, at least not at this level.
Indeed.
So with that, let me see. What is our time so far? We've been going for about 34 minutes, and we haven't yet talked about Doom. So I think it's about high time. This could be like an hour right here.
You sure there's nothing else about Bulletstorm? I feel like we're missing something. It's great. If you haven't played it, play it. Mm-hmm. Yeah, maybe ignore the dialogue, but definitely play it.
It could maybe skip the cutscenes, or don't play when there's children around. Whatever you do.
Definitely not. Definitely not. Other than that, great game. I guess it is Doom time, right?
Just here, there we go. So, Doom 2016. Much like, when did Resident Evil 7 come out? Was that 2017? see. Because this was definitely, yep, Resident Evil 7 came out in 2017, so 2016, 2017 was another very interesting 2-year period of the game industry. And, whenever we do, we need to get back to an influential games on survival horror, because I'll be, talking for like 4 or 5 hours on that one for sure. But with Doom 2016, this was one of those games that, again, like, I think it just surprised everyone. Like, no one saw, like, this game coming when it was first released. And what did you think of it?
I mean, so we're talking about the Doom 2016, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like the first. I honestly, okay. So before I saw any of the, because I know the gameplay count. What's the? I know that the gameplay I think was leaked and stuff. Anyway, I was not sure how they could change Doom up, right? From like what we were seeing of like Doom 3 and just whenever they were trying to do it. So I had no idea that they were going this direction. And I was quite blown away. The push forward combat is just so quintessential, again, akin to like we've talked about, like Bloodborne. Like why I love Bloodborne combat so much is because I'm not hiding behind a rock or whatever. Like I'm always constantly moving forward, right, and progressing, and offering you a lot of different opportunities. From by pushing forward, you are rewarded, and instead of hiding and cowering, etc. I thought it was amazing. It was really nice to actually see like a reboot, I guess, if that's what it was, of a game that like really worked that well, and to that caliber, right? It was, of course, the shooting is just so on point. The audio, very weighty, very crunchy, excellent level design. I could go on. How did you feel? What were your initial impressions of it, Josh?
I loved it. As you said, like push forward combat is such a defining aspect of how the first person shooter genre really changed in the middle of the 2010s to where it is today. And to me, I think it's really spoiled me when it comes to a lot of the FPSs I've played. That
Right.
I really don't want to go back to the era of having to hunt around for first aid kits, or, oh no, I go find that turkey leg I left 15 rooms back. Where the hell was it? It was on a shelf behind a wall in a secret room kind of thing. And with Doom 2016, it is again like this case of kind of like where a good reboot really worked. Like this was a developer just basically saying we're throwing everything out of the window and we're starting over from scratch, and we're going to make a game that it doesn't have to be held to any other standards. And it's again like one of those cases where we're sitting here talking about in 2023, but like in 2016, like people were like freaking out with the idea of, wait, we don't have to reload. Why aren't there any major health kits? How am I supposed to get my ammo back? I'm supposed to get close to these enemies?
And, I'm almost dead. I gotta get closer to them.
And it's also very rapid in terms of its gameplay. We said like the early 2010s was very slow, very methodical. You don't want to stand outside of cover. That's bad. Doom 2016 is basically, there are the enemies, run. Just go right over there. Don't stop running. If you stop running, you're dead.
Right. I mean, and everything about it, like from the level design, and I actually loaded it up earlier today, and I was just really looking, just to kind of pay attention to the gun design, or the feel, the audio, and I was actually watching the AI, and the AI is rather advanced. I saw it doing a lot of really good stuff to keep you engaged and to keep you moving while not overwhelming you, but overwhelming you just enough, right? And so that's really important because, right, like you could just jump into a room and then all 20 enemies are just walking right towards you. Well, instead, they had attack cues where they would stay back and give you so much room, and it kept the game going progressively forward. So I was just really amazed, but like all aspects. And again, back to the original point, when this game came out, no one was doing this, right? Like journalists' heads were exploding. No one could understand where this game came from. It literally came out of left field, just out of nowhere. And I myself was also taken aback, like how well. I cannot think of another reboot that has been done so well. I mean, I'm sure there's some other ones, but that really just took everything that it really had. I don't know, hell, demons, and just flipped it on its head, but kept everything the same but different, right? So I think it just did really well at achieving that overall.
And there's an important game dev tip. Just keep everything the same, but make it different, and your game will succeed. Right. It's just that simple. Yeah, and to your point about the enemy AI, I think that's another very understated aspect of how Doom Eternal succeeded. Each enemy had kind of like its own basic behavior. The Pinkies would charge at you. Imps would use fireballs. Arc Vials would stay back. Cacodemons, and so on. But they did that kind of thing where the enemy's behavior would kind of like be almost like a switch flip. It's like, okay, first we're going to flip the switches of the imps. They're going to come at you. Okay, imps are done. Flip them back up. Let's go flip the Cacodemon. Okay, he's done. Move him back. And it didn't feel like it would have been so easy to say, okay, every enemy's on all at once. Here's 15 Pinkies, 27 imps, 30 Cacodemons are all firing at you. Very much in line, if we look at kind of like Doom 1, Doom 2 from back in the day, that was kind of how that behavior was. And many fans, modders, and people who made, mods around Doom built a lot of their maps like that. Where, okay, we're just going to drop you in this room, here's 50 enemies all interacting with you at the same time. And while it was challenging, it also made things very chaotic in terms of how you're supposed to process that. With Doom Eternal, again, it's set up... Oh, I'm sorry, not Doom Eternal, Doom 2016. It's set up to kind of put you in that state of flow. Of, okay, I need to kill these enemies. Well, who's the most pressing threat? And the most pressing threat will change minute by minute. And it felt really good to play that game. Again, with like Doom and like this era, the arenas are really just like table dressing. Like, it's not really changing what you're able to do, but being able to hide behind this wall or use a pillar over there as a momentary cover really does affect how much you're able to do in it. And to Rat's comment about Doom 2016, like, it's not really designed around downtime. Like, the only arguably downtime you could have is when you're searching for secrets in the level. And I really love the level design in Doom 2016. But again, I've been talking for a few minutes. I'm going to rest my voice for a second. So, what did you think of the level design?
I mean, I thought it was excellent and like not. I wouldn't say quite a masterclass because it is a shooter, but I think the level design in that game is great, but it all works together again with the speed of the character, the way that the enemies you are encouraged to move forward to the enemies. So because you're like constantly pushing forward through the level, you're always kind of exploring and always seeing that, and then you use the level design to give you the affordance to keep moving. I personally love the level design of it. Doom Eternal, we haven't got to yet. I really liked some of the level design of that a little more. Just from maybe the set and setting and stuff. But anyway, I just thought it was great. And it was really good at utilizing all of the weaponry and mechanics and AI and just allowing it all to show off through the level design.
Yeah, but if we somehow don't get to Doom Eternal this week, we will definitely get to it next week, because that's another, like, hour and a half, 2 hour game to talk about for sure. And yeah, like to Rat's comment about there's games need that downtime. Yeah, you need to, again, wind the player down before you can really wind them back up. If your game is nothing but excitement, I find that gets very tiresome. It starts to drain over, here's 5 hours of nothing but hardcore fights. Enjoy yourself, kind of thing. And yet, to build off what you were saying about the level design, this was where that, FPS meme finally broke of, 90 shooters, giant sprawling map, 2,000 shooters, a one-line corridor kind of thing. Like, Doom's 2016 is one of those games that, again, like, if you didn't grow up playing, 90s, early 2000 shooters, it feels like you're being, like, thrown into, like, a tornado of, okay, here's this level, go. We're not telling you to go down that hallway. You go over there, jump over there, find that key. Oh, hit that switch, opens up that secret door that takes you to this classic, Doom 1 map. And it did a really great job of incentivizing the player to do that with the different upgrades. I guess here's a question for you and for chat. What did you think of the upgrade system from Doom 2016? Being able to, raise your ammo, health, and armor respectively, the different weapon mods you can find, that kind of thing.
I mean, I guess it just kind of felt kind of part and parcel, because most shooters were doing it. So I think I would have been just a little more taken back if they didn't include it, right? So to me, it just felt, run of the mill. Josh, what do you think?
Yeah, I would agree with that. Like, it's probably the least memorable aspect of the game. I like when they introduce, like, kind of like the the mod modifiers, so you could put like different passives on, like increase the range you can do glory kills. This one gives you like slowdown. Again, like, this is a greater topic, but it has to do with like difference between kind of incremental upgrades and like very unique ones that are few and far between. But
write that down.
With Doom 2016, it did a fantastic job, once again, of making the player feel like the star of the game. As we were saying, like, this is not a game about being passive. This is not one where, again, oh no, I got hit, I need to hide behind this wall for 45 seconds. And the glory kill system, it like we've said with a lot of these talks, like, the stuff that stands out so much in these games is oftentimes the stuff that sounds so simple. You get a QTE style kill. Okay, it doesn't sound like that big of a deal, but it completely changed the focus and the pacing of combat. And you couldn't, I think, play Doom 2016 and, with extension, Doom Eternal, if they didn't have that glory kill system in place.
Yeah. Now that I'm really thinking about it, like, as I was playing it earlier, that glory kill, when you did damage and you're running low and so there's one enemy you could glory kill in between the other ones, so you would jump down and do that glory kill, and from there you turn around and then there's more action the other way, so it just keeps it so dynamic. And I think, yeah, that's right. If they didn't have the glory kills, I'm not sure how that game, we would have been heading back more toward like Doom 3 territory, right? Like, just kind of moving of one or two steps forward, but not really,
It's that difference again where how the resource spend really impacts the pacing of these games. If you're playing a traditional shooter and, oh no, I don't have enough health, then we go into kind of like sniper, peek out the corner, shoot an enemy, go back. Peek out, shoot, go back. In Doom, again, oh no, I'm out of ammo, what do? I pull out my chainsaw and run at the nearest enemy to finish them off. And like I've said, it's why I've really grown to appreciate push-forward combat as a difference from other games. Because it very much, it punishes you actually from hoarding your ammo rather than punishing you for spending. Again, in a lot of the shooters I played, oh no, I can't use my rocket launcher because what if there's an enemy 30 minutes down the line and there's no rocket launcher ammo? Here, I'm just going to shoot every rocket I have and then recover my ammo, and then I get to shoot more rockets at people.
I mean, I swear, I don't know how many shooters you get the rocket and then you immediately just stow it because you know you only have like 4 bullets and you're not going to
Mm-hmm.
see another 4 bullets for 10 years. So you never really get to like use it. And if you do, you wasted it. You're like, oh, I wasted it on an imp and now the boss is up ahead. So yeah. And it's like this way where it's like, you know, there will be constant ammo. You're not out of, you get to really experience like, each weapon and your experience, your movement, instead of being um, held down by hoarding and resource management
Mm-hmm.
in the wrong ways, right?
Yeah.
Because we can do resource management and all kind of stuff in certain other genres and certain games, even shooters, but it doesn't work here, right?
Yeah.
This is
And
this is
to
Doom.
Rat's Tail comment, it's not so much about an overabundance of ammo, it's about the ability to resupply the player. Because again, in classic FPS design, all ammo and health is hand placed by the designer. They know exactly how many bullets, rockets, plasma cells, and so on that a level will have.
It's on a
It,
spreadsheet.
yeah. In Doom 2016 or with push forward combat, the amount of ammo the player gets is entirely variable based on how many glory kills they do, how many, whatever is the ammo resupply power that they use. So you don't have to worry about, oh no, I ran out of all my ammo in this one fight. Now I'm left with, I'm just going to punch enemies for the next 20 minutes. It's okay, we have a very. And the thing about Doom 2016 and with extension to Doom Eternal is that you don't have a super high kind of capacity to hold ammo. I think it's probably one of the lower examples of the genre. But again, it's that case of I'm out of ammo, I can resupply whenever I want. I'm about to, die, I go glory kill an enemy, I'm back to full health. And it's one of those things where you really, really need to balance your entire game around that. Because if it's not, then either the player feels too powerful and there's no challenge, or the player feels too weak and the game feels imbalanced along those lines.
Exactly. I mean, to per Kelly's point, a shooter stops being a shooter if you run out of ammo, right? Or if you're reloading, right? I mean, that's you taking those two things out of where you're always constantly in action, right?
Mm-hmm.
It really changes the game.
Yep. And it's very hard to, again, get the feel of combat down. And there's a discussion. I need to do a design video, and maybe we'll do a cast about this at some point, about kind of like the different feelings of flow when it comes to these action games. And you want the player to kind of get into whatever the flow state of your game is as quickly and as effortlessly as possible. Yep, and to Arva's point about different ammo works, as long as you have something there. You need to have the player to have that out. We were playing the game H-Rot last night. I was playing against the boss of the second episode, and I ran out of ammo, and they were still spawning enemies. So it's like, oh, I'm just going to start kicking enemies. I'm sure I can kick the grenade launcher at him, and he'll just he'll go down very quickly.
I know you got it, right, Josh?
Yeah, I just shin kicked the final boss, and he exploded. And I guess here's another question, or here's another point about like Doom 2016. Like the gunplay in it felt good. I wouldn't say the guns felt like masterclass in the same way as Bulletstorm did. Like, what did you think of the gunplay?
I did think that they felt maybe a little bit goggy is the word I would say compared to like the Christmas of Bulletstorm,
Mm-hmm.
Christmas to the Christmas of Bulletstorm. Well, no, utterly like the gunplay in Bulletstorm was like Christmas, and then I guess Doom is more like Thanksgiving, depending on. But yeah, I mean, I felt like it could have been a little better. Um, and I'm not sure what exactly was holding. Maybe it was because there was so much emphasis on the glory kill and like movement. Maybe there wasn't so much time spent on the guns. But I mean, it's Doom. I don't know, Josh. How did you feel about the gun play?
I felt it was just okay. That it didn't really do a lot, like, to move things forward in that respect. It was serviceable. It did what it needed to do. But, and I think it's definitely where, like, the split happens between Doom 2016 versus the Doom Eternal fans. Like, Doom 2016 is a game where, again, the whole point is throw gun at everything. You know, minigun, laser gun, shotgun, rocket launcher gun. It's all gun. So every weapon is just different amounts of damage to that. And again, it worked, but I definitely prefer Doom Eternal, which is, again, a whole nother beast in this conversation.
Yeah, I would say I prefer Doom Eternal also as well.
So, with Doom 2016, we talked about push-forward combat, we talked about the level design, we talked about environmental design. Anything else about Doom 2016 before we kind of switch over to another game?
I think it was monumental in proving what you can do with a reboot. What did we say earlier? Same but different. It is the key. And it really, showed a lot of new things that you could do in a shooter, and push some boundaries in ways that I think that needed to be done for sure. Other than that, I think we've covered everything on that one. What's next on the docket?
Let's see. Is there a story in Doom? I think the story is a Marine too angry to die. I think that's the general story of Doom. And in Doom Eternal, it's man too angry, he goes kills the devil and God, basically.
Right.
The story. He just kills everyone.
Just kills everybody. That's
So,
hell, yeah.
As a bit of a time check, we are just about at an hour. So, okay. I think the next time we want to talk about is Dusk, because I did feature it on the thumbnail. And then we'll kind of take stock after Dusk and see whether or not we can get to Doom Eternal this week, or do we kind of save Doom Eternal for next week and wrap things up with kind of like the boomer shooter 2020 era of
I say we wrap it up with the boomers, and so that way we can give Doom Eternal more due, because I think that I'm a big fan of Doom Eternal and what it did. So
all right,
or how it perfected it. So yeah.
All right. So then we'll talk a little bit more about Dusk. That will probably be another 20 to 25 minutes easily, and kind of like the origins of the boomer shooter, and then we'll wrap things up for this week. So, in another moment where I feel very old, for I guess the final game for our topic this week, we're going to talk about Dusk. And Dusk apparently came out in 2018. It feels like it's been only a year or two since Dusk came out. Or maybe that's just for me because I've been playing nothing but shooters and VS likes for the last 2 years.
You're kidding, really? 2018?
Oh my goodness. But when we talk about kind of where the first-person shooter market went, especially for the independent space, we talk about Dusk. So, did you have a chance to play Dusk yet?
Just a little bit, not too much. I know you have, though. I've been a fan. I've been watching it, watching its development, or not watching its development, just studying its development and things like that. But I did not get too much time to play it. How much time did you put in, Josh?
Went all the way through on the highest difficulty I'm sorry, not the highest, second highest, because the highest is one-hit kills. So I did not want... I am not good enough for no-hit runs in these kinds of games. But Dusk is the game that when we kind of talk about the revival of single-player shooting, it, stands, on the shoulders of Doom 2016, of a lot of these games. It is the game that really I think, prove to developers and probably prove to the market once and for all that you can do a first-person shooter single player and or have that as the focus, and people will come to it. And it is, of course, now we can say it is ground zero for boomer shooters. So, Dusk itself heavily inspired by the likes of Blood, of Doom, of basically like every 90s shooter. You know,
on the Steam page they mention Redneck Rampage as an inspiration, Half-Life, Hexen, Heretic, Blood, a Quake and Doom, of course. So they went just everywhere.
Basically take the 90s, put it like in a pressure that's like squeeze everything together, like kind of like how you like a pearl when you squeeze coal really hard, and that's where we got Dusk.
That's right. I'm surprised we haven't mentioned Redneck Rampage.
I never played that one.
I did. It was terrible. It was terrible, but you know.
We never mentioned Postal either. One of the Postal games.
Oh yes. Oh my gosh. I probably put a little bit too much time in Postal. Josh, did you play some Postal?
I think the most I played of Postal was Postal 2's demo. I never really played a lot of it.
Yeah, I played the original, and I was anyway, so where are we back to?
Like with the Dusk. So Dusk was a very long time coming game. I know I spoke with both Davids from New Blood, Dave Austri and David Zeminski about it. And it is a game that it took a very long time, and with development like this, you can really see the kind of evolution of the design going from episode 1 to 2 to 3 in it. Yeah, it is again a game that very simple in its approach, but it's oftentimes very hard to make simple right in games like this.
Indeed.
So I'll look up the store page for it. There we go.
Yeah, I'm watching the trailer right now.
Yeah, it is a game that it pretty much wears, again, all of its inspirations on its sleeves. And what it does really well, if Doom 2016 was a game that kind of showed a reinvention of shooters, Dusk is a game that shows what you could do with a classic formula as, you know, iterated and as polished as one could be with it.
Yeah, I definitely see they're using like the velocity-based Quake movement, very much wearing Quake and everything on its sleeve here.
Mm-hmm. It is again going back to that where you can bunny hop around for increased speed.
Oh yes, those are the days.
But what Dusk does really well is that it gives you that really good sense. Like when we talk about gunplay, there's two aspects of it. One is making the actual firing of the weapon, the actual, you know, what the gun does interesting. And then there's kind of like the aesthetics of the weapon. You know, do the bullets have a really good sound to them? Can you feel like the meatiness of it? And Dusk does that in spades, especially with the assault rifle. Like, it's one of the most, like, meatiest assault rifles I think I've played in any FPS.
That definitely says something. What do you think about the aesthetics, though? Do you think that they, like, maybe pushed too far back, like in old school? Or how do you feel? What do you feel about the aesthetics of the game?
I feel like being like the first of like again like the Spoomer shooter, I think it gets away with it,
right?
But it did, I think, fall, or it does create that trap where, well, because you know the best example looks like this, then every game should look like that. Much like what we saw with Vampire Survivors. So you either have games that everything either looks exactly like it, or it looks nothing like it, and there's very little in between there. Yeah, but I know when I spoke with Dave Austri when we were like our first talk about Dusk, I think he said like people complain about it, he said screw them, where he used a more not as nice language when he was like talking about people complaining about the graphics.
I'm turning up the garish slider now.
We're making it even more pixelated. We're gonna do all pixels.
Everything pixelated. I remember I had a friend of mine pitch a game idea to me. He was like, all right, so here's the game. As you play, the game just keeps getting worse and worse. So like you lose like sliders and you lose the ability to move. And I said, that's not a good idea. It's kind of like God of War.
Yeah, but with Dusk and kind of like growing like the boomer shooter aspect of the genre, the level design was very well done. I think one thing that Dusk did that we're beginning to see, or we have saw more developers do, is try to create a sense of place. And it really is kind of like this merging of like 90s shooter design with the 2000s, early 2010s, where the 2000s, 2010s really try to ground the environment. That was more of a focus on the environmental design over the level design. Where, 90s shooters, it was the opposite. Here's a hospital, it's supposed to be a hospital, but, there's 47 different corridors that go nowhere kind of design. Dusk, I think, did things really well. Like, here's an area where there's a mysterious church on a hill. But you search and you're finding keys, and you finally get into the church, and you discover it's a trap. And you get, sent down, and now you gotta fight your way out of the church. Like, it still has that kind of, like, gaminess or very level design focus, but there's a sense of personality. And I feel like that is becoming more and more important, especially in genres like this, where, again, a lot of people equate it just dumb fun.
Exactly, indeed.
Let's see. And to Arva's point, yet again, like, it's one of the things someone was talking about this on Twitter. It's why you can do something like a Minecraft or a Dwarf Fortress, and you're not focused, or at least, Minecraft 10, 15 years ago, when you're dealing with very basic graphics, because you can make things very interactable. You can go crazy with the mechanics when you don't have to worry about rendering, Ultra 4K. Like, imagine trying to do Dwarf Fortress, but with 4K graphics in Unreal Engine. I'm pretty sure the engine would explode if you try to simulate all of Dwarf Fortress in 4K.
I've actually thought about that before. I was like, how would that even be possible? Yeah, I've thought about that in Unreal Engine 5, doing Dwarf Fortress.
For any developers out there watching, let us know how that works for you, or if anyone wants to attempt that.
Yeah, guys, your first game, 4K Dwarf Fortress.
I can't even imagine what would happen if you like hit render, and it'll just say, you serious? You really want to do this? And then your computer explodes when you hit render.
Are you sure? Okay.
But yeah, to Dusk's credit, it kept, like, again, like, even though it is very pixel art, obviously pixel art style, there's a lot of variety in level design. There's a lot of variety in what the player is doing, moment to moment. One level, you're in a city and you're trying to find all the keys, and it's very quiet, and then it gets really loud when enemies start appearing and trying to take you on. One level literally has you fighting a tornado that comes in and starts like throwing enemies and destroys a building that you're in. Like, there's variety in the design that I don't think would have been possible, again, if we were dealing with like a more modern day engine, or modern day sensibilities of design, where we need to make sure that the levels are consistent from one to another. In this game, one level you lose your flashlight, now you're fumbling around the dark, and everyone who's played the game remembers the invisible enemies that start showing up, and they're only visible when you shoot them. So it's like, oh, I hear something, just shoot my gun, then like 2 feet in front of you, like this guy's like this, about to hit you.
I was on board till the invisible enemies. Perkley says, I'm a big advocate for poor graphics. Crappier the graphics usually means better gameplay story nowadays.
Again, you can do more with less as an indie developer than I think a lot of AAA studios could do.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, as we've always said, indie games have the ability to really push outside of the box. You can do like any graphic style you want, and you can easily steer and change direction much easier than we've talked about the generalization of like AAA. There's no generalization in as an indie dev. Let's see, how do people keep going after so much work done?
I guess we need to find the time.
Yeah.
We just need to add 12 more hours each day. It's like someone hack the engine for that.
I get into the .ini file and find out how to add. I was thinking this morning, I was like, just 4 or 5 more hours in the day. That's all I need. Just
It's easy.
It's easy,
man. And like with Dusk, I think with everything that we've talked about, there isn't a lot that I would say the game goes like over the top in terms of its design. Again, it was designed to be very much that modern retro throwback of a shooter. Like if you released Dusk 25 years ago, people will probably wouldn't even bat an eye to the game. But it is, as we've said many times in this series and just in some of our discussions, timing really is everything to some of these games. If Dusk would have came out 10 years earlier, maybe some people would be like, yeah, okay. Just like if, Resident Evil 7 came out in a similar form, 4 or 5 years earlier. But again, in that release period, it really did become the standard of a boomer shooter, and what would also, I think, prove to developers, I mean, prove to a lot of any developers in this respect, that you don't need to worry about 4K graphics. There's a difference between style and just, graphical horsepower.
Right. Also, I think it tells, like, there's people talk about like the fast follow or following trends. Well, I believe that it's always, when we talked about timing also, I believe that no matter what, the game development cycle will always continue in a circle, right? So like right now, zombies might not be in, but if you're working on a zombie game, by the time you release it, zombies could be in again. You know what I mean? It's just, that's how it is. And I believe so, like, this game shows that even when it's released, that it is possible to release these types of games like at almost any time, right? And that good gameplay trumps of everything, and that if you want, graphics aren't, the focus of everything, is that gameplay is still number one. And also you can release something at any time and not really like worry about timing as an dev specifically.
And I do think like there is some elements of time, like you definitely won't release your game with like a major release. It's going to overshadow it. But in terms of like the genres themselves, it is a very tough line to walk, because sometimes you kind of have to wait for the market to be ready for it. As I've said before, like the deck building roguelike genre, there were lots of deck building style games released prior to Slay the Spire, and most people probably don't even remember them. When you say deck builder, everyone thinks Slay the Spire kind of thing. And just like when people think about kind of like shooters, we think about Doom, we think about Dusk. And it is I think the one aspect that you do have to worry about is standing out. Because when a game sets that standard, everyone is going to be measured to it. And it's why, again, like so many games that are follow-ups or inspired by the new hotness tend not to do that well. They may do well in, relative speaking, but again, Slay the Spire is still like the de facto king in terms of revenue for the deck building roguelike genre.
Right. I mean, just off the top of your head, what's another like one in that genre that's doing just as well?
Doing just as well, I can't think of any. I can think of like 30 different deck builders I've played in the last 5 years. But I can't think of one that people would know or would have
Exactly.
earned as much as Slay the Spire did.
Exactly.
And again, and for a genre like to take this back to Dusk and Boomer shooters, that while it has created, I think, a new market, there we go. We do need more typing of the dead.
Typing of the dead. Yes.
Mm-hmm. While Dusk has certainly created a market for itself, or created this kind of retro shooter market, none of the other games I think have done as well or have gotten as much publicity. Let me see. I'm curious how Dread Templar did. Yeah, Dread Templar, one that we played earlier this year that I really enjoyed, sitting at all reviews at 600 on Steam. Ooh. Dusk is sitting at just over 16,000.
16,000.
And let's see, what was another Ultra Kill? I think Ultra Kill is probably doing better. Ultra Kill's at 55,000. But when we talk about Doom Eternal next week, we'll be talking about Ultra Kill for sure. Don't you worry about that one. But again, it's very hard when someone sets the standard for these games to kind of overtake it. And there have been, I know when I spoke with David Zeminski, I think he's very hesitant to make a Dusk 2. Because he's afraid, much like in Half-Life's case, that how do you top Half-Life? How do you top Dusk? And again, it's very easy to kind of design yourself into a hole there, going, well, the whole Duke Nukem Forever. We just put everything into the game, and surely it will stand out.
Yeah, Bulletstorm is what Duke Nukem wanted to be. I mean, imagine Dave's position, right? Where do you go from there, right? And we've talked about this before with sequelitis or but being how do you top that, right? And it's I don't know, do you try another genre? But clearly you've gotten down the shooting aspect and level design and everything about that genre down, but right, so you have to go somewhere with it, but where do you go? And I am not in that position. I envy him, but don't in that regard. So yeah, it's where would you go in that? And that's a really hard decision. I mean, if you just make a sequel, right? You just make a sequel, people will buy it, people will play it, but does it in your heart live up to what you want it to be and what it should be? And I know definitely that developer wants that game to be of that caliber, right? So
yep, and don't forget, if you make a sequel, if the first game took 5 to 7 years, do you really want to spend another 5 to 7 years on the same exact genre?
10 years of your life
just making a shooter.
Yeah.
But I do have an easy answer for this. Just turn your game to Minecraft. There you go. That's going to be in the next Unity update, next to the add fishing mini game. Just make your game,
turn it to Unity, demake.
Sell 10 million copies. You're done.
10 copies.
It's the same but different. It's easy.
Same but different button. We're getting there.
But to I think begin to wrap things up, because again, if we start talking about Doom Eternal and Ultra Kill and the kind of the 2020s era of where the genre has gone, we'll be here for another 40 minutes minimum on that one.
Yeah, no, I want to give Ultra Kill and Doom Eternal their breath. They deserve that, definitely. So we might end up with another 2 more episodes possibly.
God. We still need to talk about that whole
shooters.
There you go. We need to do I want to talk about that whole IGN rant about not playing indie games too. We need to get Seth on that too.
Yes, definitely. That has definitely been going around in my head. And I actually tuned in. I don't know. I was waiting for some lighting what was I doing? Cooking. I was building in my game. And I just tuned into IGN, and when you listen to what they're talking about, it's so AAA. There is no nothing about indie or anything. And I listened for about 5 seconds, and I was like, wow, they're in a different world, right? About where they think about their games and their coverage. So definitely.
only like 3 video games came out this year, right?
They were literally talking about, yeah, well, there's only year we're in our drought, and I was like, what? I'm out of here, man.
See, that's how you hurt me. Just say the words, there's no video games being released.
Video games, right?
I didn't just play 2 festivals
games a day. Yeah.
I didn't just play like 30 games in 2 weeks.
Right, man. I know.
Oh, man. But before we get into that rant, and this turns into like another 3 hours, again, I gotta say that for the 10,000 special
10,000,
stream
yeah.
when we go
just
like
have a rant
super long. Yeah. But to wrap things up for this section, I think to kind of summarize the last hour, the kind of reinvention of the first-person shooter genre in the 2010s really came down to focusing on making this single player the star, and more specifically, making the gunplay feel really great. And to do that, or to facilitate that, you need to balance your game around, why not let the player just infinitely restore their ammo, or infinitely restore their health? It's not a case, it's a very easy trap to fall into of just saying, just give the player infinite ammo. Just let them have infinite health, infinite ammo, the game will be great, right? No, like, if the game is not balanced for it, and I think, again, this is why Dusk works so well. Dusk, again, is a classically designed FPS. It doesn't have push-forward combat. It doesn't have, auto-regenerating health or resources like that. But it doesn't need to do that because the game is balanced around that. It feels good to play. Like, even on the, difficulty where the enemies are stat or tweaked the highest, it still feels good to shoot. It doesn't feel like a normal enemy takes 57 shotgun rounds to kill. And if your game is not balanced, again, this is why reflex-driven games are so hard to get right. If it doesn't feel good all the way around, the player is not going to get invested in that. Much like, again, why a lot of people kind of checked out of a lot of shooters in the mid-2000s into the 2010s, where how many people really did enjoy hiding behind the umpteenth chest high wall, waiting for the enemy to, pop their head out.
Yeah, man. I was like, I guess shooters are dying now. As I was hiding behind that brick wall, I was like, I guess this is the last one I'm playing. Like, I was wondering where, when the change was going to happen, and we were thirsting for this change, as you mentioned.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And it took, again, developers just saying, you know what? Who cares about, multiplayer? Who cares about trying to do what everyone else is doing? Let's do something different. And again, when you're focusing on the single player side, it lets you be more creative with what you can do. You can have a crazy puzzle in a game like Half-Life or in Portal 2. Or you can design your weapon that it, shoots spinning blades, and then the blades turn to bullets, and then the bullets turn back into blades, or, the shark gun from Armed and Dangerous, or the whole Ratchet and Clank variety. And it lets...
guns.
Yep, definitely dubstep guns. Sunset Overdrive as well is another really good one. But when you can get creative like that, it helps keep the player invested. And I guess it's my final point before I stop. I need to go get something to eat as well. I need to refuel myself here. Good merging of environmental and level design. Making each level not just feel like a set of rooms or a set of arenas, but giving it like a sense of place, that it's memorable. That you remember what you're doing on this level beyond just walk into a room, shotgun all the enemies. And again, I just realized we didn't mention the Wolfenstein revivals. Wolfenstein definitely fits in this respect, that it both grounded it, but it also really elevated it.
So we are going to have to super elevated it. So we're going to have to talk about this on the next episode, but just, you know what? I'm going to save it for the next one. But yeah, Wolfenstein. Oh my gosh. Even my waifu, she was watching, I forgot which Wolfenstein reboot she watched it. Even the story she liked of it, like of a shooter, which is very rare, right? I mean, for someone, I'm just like, hey, the story part's on, and she would come watch the story of it, and that's And then, of course, the gunplay was on. Anyway, save it for the next podcast.
Wolfenstein was apparently 2014. Damn.
Wow. Wow.
Definitely a long time. I think what we'll probably do then for next week, we'll kind of talk about we'll turn into kind of like a best of where shooters are at today. And we can fit Wolfenstein and Ultra Kill and Doom Eternal and kind of wrap things up with where the genre can go from here.
Okay.
So that's a great way of framing things. So there's your preview for next week. So
there we go.
When we come back next Saturday around FPS chess, yes. When we come back next Saturday around 5 p.m. ET, we'll be wrapping up this series, kind of talking about the best of modern day shooting and kind of where the genre is today. But I think that's all I have to say. So any final points from you?
Let me see here. I think we pretty much covered up. Looking forward to next ones. Other than that, Josh, no, I think that's it.
All right. So with that, we'll wrap things up for this week's episode of the Key to Games cast. Again, Josh, it was a pleasure hanging out with you this afternoon or evening. And yeah, we have plenty of things to get scheduled and 10K celebrations to plan.
Definitely. So be sure to enlist me if needed. Mm-hmm. All my links are down below. Like, subscribe, join the Discord, buy Josh's books, wishlist, Samurai Pig, Rooster Rampage. Josh?
Other than that, again, Patreon, Discord, all that good stuff. As I said, we'll be back around 5 p.m. for our next show. Do the YouTubing stuff, bells, liking. Again, if 90,000 people want to subscribe for one day, go for it, and then you don't have to stay around. But hopefully I'll get something, or if someone wants to make me a YouTube 10K plaque, let me know. But with that said, come back for daily discussions on game design here and on game wisdom, where you examine the art and science of games. Until our next show, have a great rest of your weekend.